Hello and welcome back to El Podo, the Primera RFEF show, where we take you down to the third tier of Spanish football every single week to uncover all the brilliant stories that you probably don't hear of in Spanish football every single week. And we are getting into the really exciting part of the season. We have only got a handful of games left. There are teams being promoted, there are teams being relegated, and we're still doing some shuffling around to see where some sides might end up. And even on this show today, we've got a debut pairing up top because, as you can probably tell, you've got your host here, Nicholas Bell, but you're also joined by Tom Morgan Charters in our debut appearance together. Tom, this is exciting.
Yeah, it's very strange for everyone not to hear Liam and his expertise this weekend. So it's down to us two to inform everyone what's going on in Primera RFEF.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, the bastion of knowledge that is Liam, our fountain of all things Spanish football, to be fair, because he is well versed in everything. He's obviously been in Yecla this weekend, so he was travelling back yesterday. And I know he was going to try and make himself available for today, but I think he's probably taking a nice bank holiday rest for himself and possibly celebrating Avro's promotion as well. Let's not forget too. So maybe some sore heads involved. Who knows? But you're in safe hands here with me and Tom. We have gone through every single game this weekend, and we're going to go through all those matches later on in the show. But first, we're going to do some news. And starting on a bit of a sad part, Tom, because you brought this to our attention this week, that the Players Association in Spain, the AFA, had put out a statement on behalf of Deportivo Guadalajara, hadn't they? And it wasn't great.
Yeah, it was about the players not receiving payments and bonuses, as well as the silence from the club in regards to the lack of commitment in the long-term running of the club, which is sad to see. And if this carries on until next season, I think they're going to have an even worse season if it carries on.
Yeah, it's an odd one, really, isn't it? Because, like you say, how many times this season have we kind of heard this story where, players at this level haven't, received their wages on time, haven't been paid bonuses from promotions from the season before. I look towards the stories from Torremolinos, from Tarazona, and other teams as well, further around the football pyramid. And I think it just goes to show and resonate that, unlike the English Football League system, and I'm not going to say that League One is awash with money, Tom. We're both fans of League One clubs, or at least one of us is. I'll get that one in nice and early. I just had to get that in nice and early. But, at least the money's there. At this level of Spanish football, there just isn't that kind of financial capital, isn't it? And there are players here who do play full-time, but if they don't get paid, it means they can't pay their mortgages. It means that the food shop becomes a bit more of a difficulty. Car payments, all those other things that we take for granted. It really hits home in this level when it doesn't happen. And I think that's why maybe the staff and the squads at Deportivo Guadalajara, which is a team that we love, have had to go to this extreme just to sort of like put people on notice and are probably getting some additional support. It's sad to see, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like I feel more sorry for the non-playing staff, really, because most of the time it's mainly the players that get mentioned about not being paid, but the non-playing staff are the same, and also they probably get paid considerably less than the players, and most likely to lose their jobs if there is job cuts as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes, we've got to make sure that we're aware of sort of like what the levels are. And, as big as a club as Deportivo Guadalajara are, they only came up for Segunda Federación last season. So, they're rebuilding right now. So it'd be interesting to see what happens in the long term. And hopefully they can get this situation rectified as well, because, we hate to see them suffer like this, which is not great. But they're still clinging in there, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. Some funner news for us, Tom, and I know we've both been excited about this weekend. We've obviously been celebrating the last few weeks the promoted sides from Segunda Federación. We've had Real Unión confirmed as champions. We've had San Andreu, and we've also had, less enthusiastically, Deportivo Fabril. This was the last weekend of the season in Segunda Federación, which means we still had some teams to decide as champions. In Grupo 5, we had basically a two-team playoff between Real Major Honda and Ude Sanze. to see who would come out on top there. It is the Madrid side that have come out on top there over the Basque. They beat Rayo Vallecano by 3-0 this weekend. But the real excitement was in Grupo 4, Grupo 4, where at one point we were looking at Extremadura being champions, and then all of a sudden it looked like they weren't champions, and then finally in sort of the last kick of the game, they were champions, weren't they?
Yeah, it was a Jack Harper penalty in the 90th minute, which meant they surrendered their top spot in the final minutes of the game. But in dramatic fashion, as you say, Diego Diaz scored a 93rd minute winner that guaranteed them the top spot and a 4th promotion in as many seasons.
Yeah, that's fascinating that as well, because I'm sure people will know, the previous guises of Extremadura, where they were, I think they were CF Extremadura for a while. The last time they reached the La Liga with Rafael Benitez, they've obviously suffered since then, and that club was devolved. Then they had CD Extremadura, which is what the guise is now, but then they had to dissolve that in 2022 and became CD Extremadura in 1924. So this is their third time sort of like coming back from the dead, essentially. But to have 4 successive promotions in 7 years is, really, really, interesting. And basically, I think they're going to be a very exciting addition to Primera RF next season. And, we'll be interested, obviously, with Merida, looking more likely that they're going to stay in this division, and possibly even Cacereño, because they're still fighting to remain in Grupo Uno. And, we see Extremadura as a bit of a final frontier of football in Spain. It's not the most football-centric region of the country, but to have these 3 sides in Primera RF is maybe a sign of the changing times, I suppose, Dom.
Yeah, and it's also good news for Liam as well, because that's the only region of Spain he hasn't got to, and disappointing news about the fixtures for the second to last games of the season. He can't get to Florida in time, can he? But yeah, Extremadura, hopefully 3rd time lucky, and hopefully they do themselves well and keep themselves as a club.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the official letter of complaint will be coming in from El Podo for for those fixture releases, because there literally couldn't have been a worse time. And these are the weekends as well where they align all the fixtures to the same time on 2 different days. So we've got, I think it's all 8 o'clock kickoffs on the Saturday night, and then all 4 o'clock kickoffs on the Sunday afternoon. And it's just like, it just had to be. You had a 50-50 chance, and it's just unlucky that Liam's going to be unable to make that. But hopefully plenty of excuses and reasons to go next season. Well, I'm sure hopefully we can all go together and experience some Extremaduran football for the first time. As well as being the last day of the season in Segunda RF, it means we also got our playoff fixture announcements, and there were some really interesting caveats in Grupo 4, as we said, because there were 3 clubs still in the running there where they could have got them, and Recreativo de Huelva, obviously the Abuelo of Spanish football, are the first team to have reached more than 57 points in Segunda Federación and not reached a playoff. I think you sent some stat through, didn't you, Tom, about, I think it's 83 out of 84 teams have reached that marker and at least made the playoffs, and they're the first team that's never happened to.
Yeah, it just shows how mad that that group was, really. It's a very similar situation to what happened in England as well, with the National League between York and Rochdale, with only 1 promotion place, and they both finished on 100+ points.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Like I say, I think we were talking about this in our group chat, weren't we? We said it would be great to sort of maybe see 20 clubs in the Segunda Federación leagues rather than 18. And yes, you would be playing an extra 6 games a season, but it just means that you could possibly even out the relegation and promotion picture a bit more, because there's a potential for, in some leagues, for a whopping 6 sides to be relegated, depending on the worst performing teams in the playoffs, for relegation as well, down to Tercera. So it's a real trapdoor kind of league, which is why they call it El Pozo, the translation being the well, it is so difficult to get out of. But we do have our Segunda RF playoffs, and there's some really interesting fixtures in here. So I'll just quickly roll through them. So Cruxo against Atletico Baleares. The Mallorcans are the real form team coming into these playoffs at the minute with, I think it's something mad like 8 wins on the spin. Real Jaén, which is a team I'm really desperate to see join us in Primera RF next year. It's a bucket list sort of place I want to go to in terms of there's not a lot around Jaén, so it's you're going to Jaén for the weekend to watch football and that's it. So that'd be really good. They've got Alaves B, so hopefully they can knock out another filial on the way. Coria versus Deportiva Minera. We've got Tudelana against Real Oviedo B, Utebo against Aguilas, Getafe B against UD Logroñez, Royce Redis as well. Obviously, the Phoenix club of Royce FC from a few years ago. They've got a game against Ude Orense, who might replace the other Orense as well, Tom, which would be quite interesting. Last but not least, we've got Numancia against Poblense and Jerez CD against Conquense as well. So some really, really interesting games there, aren't there?
Yeah, especially the Orense side could come up, and also the Orense side in our league could stay up, and we could have an Orense derby. And do they play at the same stadium as well?
They do, yeah. They both play at Okutu, yeah. So they alternate weekends, which should be quite interesting for Primera RF standards. But an all Orense derby would be really interesting as well, because I believe, if I recall rightly, there was a split there where Udi Orense are the original and Orense CF are sort of like the business backed. I don't want to say Phoenix, but sort of like other club that came along when Ude Orense were sort of like in the mire. So again, some fans have sort of like split loyalties between the two of them. So it'd be really interesting to see them both in the same league next year. We've also got to have a little giggle as well in the Catalan Grupo, which is, I think it was Grupo Dos. Barca B missing out on a playoff place on the final day of the season, losing to bottom of the league, Torrent. That's at least that's a good thing to see. At least we're not going to have a Barca B in Primera F next year.
Yeah, one less filial to worry about. Just hopefully these other 3 filials don't make it through these playoffs.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. So, we'll definitely keep you abreast of all the Segunda Federación playoffs as they go through them. It's a whopping 3-rounder on this one, because there's 20 teams involved and only 5 of them will join the champions coming up to Primera F next season. So, hopefully we'll be able to watch some non-filial sides next season, which will be interesting, Tom, because you brought to our attention earlier the announcement that La Liga Plus is being shut down. Now, for the listeners at home, they've probably realised for the most part, unless you are into, I don't really want to say it out loud, just in case we do with some whispers, and the fire stick police are listening in on us. There's only one way to watch Primera Federation football if you're in the UK this year, whereas previously we had FEF TV, which was a great platform just for Primera F. It was brilliant, but it got taken away and put onto La Liga Plus, which you couldn't see outside of Spain. Now, with that going away, I suppose the conversation we had this afternoon, where does that leave Primera F coverage going forward? We don't know. There's no answer, but it's certainly not going to be with La Liga. Do you reckon there's a chance we might get back our own platform, which means we'll be able to watch Primera football in all its entirety and, more importantly, legally?
That is my hope, really. Bring it back to FEF TV or a similar arrangement. But then also I do worry about them not bothering and like packaging it up with some other TV company, and they only show 1 game a week or something like that, and lose the access and the coverage, really.
Yeah, which would be such a step backwards for Primera Federation as well, for the product that they've got. And bear in mind the growth in, the strength of the league as well over the last few years. For it to lose a TV deal, we've already spoken about some teams that are struggling to pay the bills at the moment. This would be a real kick in the teeth to them. So hopefully they can at least go and tender their own solution. But once Tabas has had his mitts on something, it's very difficult for that to wash off, isn't it? So we'll definitely watch that with interest. But for the time being, should we get into talk about some football games from this weekend, Tom? Starting in Grupo Uno, which I believe you were watching this weekend.
Yeah, so I managed to catch Tenerife versus Baracaldo at the Estadio Heliodoro Rodriguez Lopez. Celebrations were in full swing before kickoff due to Celta Fortuna's earlier result, which saw the Tenerife crowned as champions of Grupo Uno. Did you see the banner that they put up?
I did. I saw that they'd sort of like strewn it across the stand, didn't they? And I believe the translation was, I think you provided it to me here, Tom. Your courage and valor know no rival. Forward without fear to the final goal, which I think, before kickoff would have been a great sentiment as like an encouragement to get into Baracaldo. When the party started already, it's kind of like, yeah, well, let's just celebrate the season then. Did you see the guard of honor from Baracaldo as well? I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, very nice touch. They did struggle in the first 15 minutes of this game. Noel Lopez for Tenerife hitting the side net and trying to catch the keeper out at his near post. And Fabrizio with a decent long-range effort from 40 yards out just wide. But then the away side started to get a few free kicks into some dangerous areas of the Tenerife box, which Danny Martin dealt with well. And Galarza trying his own luck down the left, using his body and strength with a lovely chip ball into the dangerous area, which Danny Martin had to intervene. They really, really exploited Tenerife's right backs, Cesar Alvarez. And on one occasion, Pedernales beating him and then beating the centre back, but was unlucky to hit the side netting.
Just a delightful nutmeg as well there, wasn't it? That's what I took away from that. There's a bit of cheekiness about the way they grew into the game as well, wasn't it? Which was more important. I thought Baracaldo, especially towards the end of that first half, were really growing in confidence in this game and looked set to sort of like crash the party a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah, so Tenerife didn't really go through the gears, and Baracaldo grew into it. One player did catch my eye for the home side. I think he's number 29, Danny Fernandez. Spain under 18 international. Had an opportunity in the first half as he wriggles away through. He gets a low shot off, which is saved by Geisker. And the second half, the home side started to go through those gears and didn't take them too long. 5 minutes into the second half, Baracaldo were caught wide open with Anjo with a ball from deep, finding Noel Lopez with two Baracaldo defenders closing him down for some reason, which totally left the veteran Enrique Gallego to put his 17th goal of the season away.
Yeah, I was going to say we often praise the young gunners, don't we, on their ingenuity and Danny Fernandez being a prime candidate for that for Tenerife this year, but you can't knock anything that Eric Gallego has done this season. What is he, 39 years old now? Knocking in that many goals, and this is a delightful finish as well. He sort of like just bends it around Geisker, doesn't he? Using all that sort of like experience and expertise. And it sends the roof off the Heliodoro, doesn't it? In terms of like the crowd really start to get behind the team, and the party's really started then, isn't it?
Yeah, and then also he didn't last long in the second half. About a few minutes later, he got taken off, but to a standing ovation, was replaced by Jesus Di Miguel. Just makes you sort of question: is he done at Tenerife? Has he done what he set out to do and get them back into Segunda? And thinking, I'll go play somewhere else, or just totally stop playing. Who knows?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does do because, like you say, he's had a stellar career, in its entirety, and ending on the high with a promotion, taking Tenerife back into Segunda. He'll know, and we all know as well that he's not a Segunda striker anymore, unfortunately for him. But sometimes footballers, don't listen to reason, did they? They believe that they can still do it, and who knows? We saw Ruben Castro still playing for Malaga at the age of 42. So he's still got time in the legs yet. So maybe he might go for next season. But I can actually see a world where Tenerife, despite being promoted with this squad, do have a bit of a cleanse going forward, and we might see Gallego and I think Di Miguel as well possibly drop back down into Primera RFEF next season as well. So whether one retires or one stays, who knows? But it'd be interesting to see what happens, wouldn't it? Baracaldo, tried to get back into this game, to be fair to them as well. They weren't sort of like overwhelmed by the celebrations and the noise. They came up against a very resolute Tenerife defence, though, didn't they, Tom? And then that wind was really knocked out of them once Michael Mesa scored the second. And again, I look at this and go, sometimes, when luck is with you, or when the tide is with you, or when the confidence is with you, you get a second chance to have a shot. And this was very much the case here, wasn't it?
Yeah, Michael Mesa took seniority of that goal, I think, because I believe Danny Fernandez touches the ball down and Michael Mesa is right next to him, decides, right, I'm having it, and finishes it well. And yeah, it sort of finished the game, really.
Yeah.
Baracaldo did try their best within the last half an hour of the game by making 3 substitutions. They had a few long-range shots which were deflected. And also the Danny Martin was replaced at half-time for the second keeper, who got 45 minutes, but he wasn't really troubled that much.
Do you reckon that's just so he can get a medal? It must be like when they bring on sub goalkeepers in the Champions League, just so they can get him a medal in the final. But yeah, an interesting statue through our way as well, Tom, was that this is the only time that, only the second time, I should say, that a team has been relegated from the Spanish Segunda and has managed to bounce straight back as champions as well. So I know Malaga came down and went back up again, and a couple of other teams have made their way through the playoffs. But this is the first, only the second time after Amorbieta a few seasons back, where they basically come in, smash the whole place up, won the league, and are going straight back into the Segunda, hopefully with the confidence of champions as well. And Baracaldo, they'll still hope to make the playoffs. Obviously, they are just 3 points outside at the moment. Going away to Tenerife is never an easy job for anybody, never mind, a club with ambitions of reaching the playoffs, but they'll still have their sights set on Pontevedra in 5th, won't they?
Yeah, it's not over for them just yet, but I think it's going to be a bit of a tough ask for them. But 3 games left, who knows what will happen?
Anything could happen. It'd be a great team for the playoffs as well. Down towards the bottom end of Grupo Uno, there was a game in Asturias to talk about here as well. Real Aviles 2, Depor Guadalajara 2. The last time these two sides met, Tom, was way back in October, and it was a proper goal fest, wasn't it? We had a Real Aviles 4-3 win in, if I remember rightly, in quite controversial circumstances as well. But I can't quite put my finger on what that controversy was at the time, but we'll look to remind ourselves on social media. Wasn't quite a repeat of that emphaticness. However, Depor Guadalajara, who are in a survival hunt, they do want to remain in this league, and they are a few points away from those survival places. They took the lead after just 5 minutes. Your friend of mine, Tom, David Amigo, scoring once again. He's having a great season, isn't he?
Yeah, that's his 7th goal of the season. It came from the captain, Blanque, with a long diagonal ball, which saw Chukwuma Eze easily shoved off by Alex Nesquez, who provides it on a plate for our friend Amigo. Makes it 1-0, and it was a great start to the game.
Yeah, that's the kind of confident start you want to see, isn't it? But what you don't want to then see is you conceding 4 minutes later, which happened from a corner. But I wanted to draw your attention to what happened just before the corner here, Tom, because Santa Maria sort of has like an effort against the Depor goalkeeper, doesn't he? Is this a scoop from about 25 yards? Like, it didn't look like a chip. It didn't look like a shot. It looks like he's tried to scoop him from outside the box. That's just ballsy, that, isn't it?
Yeah, funny. I was going to mention that. It was like a weird scooped shot that was just looping, wasn't it? And Zarco was luckily aware of it and does enough to tip it over.
And then, it would have been spectacular if it would have gone in.
Yeah, probably one of the goals of the season, just because of how weird it was, really.
Yeah.
But then it led to the corner that they got their equaliser from, a ball from Oski, which saw Andres Carmona nodding it past a sea full of players into the far bottom corner.
Yeah, a real sort of shout back into the game, and a sort of reaction that we've seen from Real Aviles this season as well. They do tend to do quite well from going from behind as well. for me as well, it really got sort of like dogged down in the middle for large parts of this game, and it wasn't until about on the hour mark where we actually saw, some more action, and it was a penalty to Real Vilas Industrial, wasn't it? I don't know what you thought of this. Do you think it was a penalty? I'll be honest with you here. It looked a little bit soft to me with the pull. I've seen worse penalties.
Yeah, I've seen worse penalties, but he's pulled down the shirt where the player's neck is and potentially stops him from getting on the end of the cross. Yes, stupid thing to do, and it was quite clear it wasn't on the sly. He just yanked him down pretty much. And yeah, it was Julio Martinez, the left back, that did it, who was also the player that was marking Carmona for the first goal. So he wasn't really having a great afternoon.
No, sounds like a nightmare afternoon, isn't it? And there's probably only a handful of Real Vilas players that you would put on penalty duty, and usually you would hope they would score, Tom. But I'll tell you what, this one from Kevin Batista, unusually weak for him from the penalty spot.
Yeah, he normally rattles it in, but to be fair, he still does hit it with a little bit of power. But Super Zarco, a great save there, probably one of the best penalty saves we see this season.
Yeah, right down to his right-hand side. So towards the bottom corner, wasn't it? He's kind of like level with the ground. And yeah, he gets down really well. They did check it for an FES to make sure he'd not come off his line nice and early, but he was adjudged to have been all proper and correct. And then talk me through this one, Tom, because as much as he's missed a penalty and heads may go down, Kevin Batista is a player who, I think will definitely still be playing at this level next season, if not a little bit higher, potentially. He absolutely rattles this next effort, and it obviously results in them going 2-1 ahead. It's a proper thunder bastard, this, isn't it?
I was waiting for your favourite word there.
We just love that word.
Yeah. Just from about 25 yards out, absolutely blasts it, and Zarco couldn't do anything about it, which looked like it put a few nails in Guadalajara's coffin. But to be honest with you, watching this game, you'd have thought Guadalajara were the home side, as there was always looking to play on the front foot, whilst Aviles sat back and tried to hit long vertical balls to hit them on the counter-attack. And Guadalajara did play well in this game. But yeah, it was a sort of a knockout blow, really, from Kevin Bautista. But then there was 7 minutes added on.
Yeah, there was, and plenty of time, as we've seen in this league, for teams to grab equalisers here. And in around the 97th minute, there was a foul in the penalty area on Unax Alvarez, and it was originally waved away by the referee as well. He was very adamant that no foul had been committed, but an FES challenge from the Depor coach saw him go to the monitor, and he's come back and then changed his mind. And I think I agree with you entirely on this. I thought Depor deserved to come away from this game with at least a point in their hope of surviving. And they duly did. They scored the penalty, Unax converting from the penalty spot in the 97th minute. And 2-2 on the edge of it is probably fair, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, I think they would have taken a point before the game. And Raul Vilas only needs sort of 1 or 2 points to sort of secure their status in the league. So yeah, 2-2. You can't really complain about it, but Depor did play well in this game, and it was just unfortunate that they played quite well, but just didn't have that final pass or just getting on to the end of that final ball. But yeah, that was Unax's 9th goal of the season as well, which is better in his tally from last season, which was in Segunda RFEF.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think and that's been proven with Depor, is that they probably haven't scored as many goals as they would like to, but they have shared them around. To be fair to them, and it does give them that lifeline. They are still very much in the hunt for a space in Primera. I think they're only 3 points off Orense, who are in the spot just outside the relegation zone. But Real Vilas Industrial, they're still in the sights of some of those teams. Talavera, Depor, Cacereño. Very much still touchable within the next 3 matches. So, they'll be looking to try and get, some of these draws turned into wins as well. So it'd be interesting to see how that little league within this league is tearing up towards the bottom end of the season. The next match was an absolutely huge one towards the top end of the league once again. Tom, Zamora 3, Ponferradina 2. A great game on paper between two really ambitious clubs at this level. Both teams with their hearts set on being in the playoff picture come the end of the season. So whilst Zamora are firmly in there at the moment, Ponfe are just outside of it going into this game. And in the first half, it was sort of half chances for both sides, to be fair. There wasn't really anything too clear cut, was there? A lot of efforts being reduced to, shots from long distance to sort of like, Tess Sobran and Prieto. It was a bit of an interesting first half that way, wasn't it?
Yeah, before we start talking about the game, it was fair play to the 600 or so Ponfe fans travelling down for about a two-hour journey in the car. And to be honest, I thought they was really let down by the side of what they saw on the pitch. And also, I forgot to tell you, but one of mine and yours favourite players from La Liga was in the stand to watch his former side.
Oh, was it?
Can you guess who it was?
Oh, gosh, right. Former side from Ponfe and Zamora.
So from Ponfe.
So from Ponfe. Was it Yedai? Was he there or?
No, it was Izzy Palisson. He was there.
Ah, right. I see. Well, he's got a bit of spare time at the minute, hasn't he? Why not go and watch Ponfe play? Oh, that must have been good though. It's a shame that he didn't get to see a great result for Ponfe, but at least he got to watch 3 goals. That's a bonus, isn't it?
To be honest, it wasn't the scoreline sort of flat as Zamora. Really, it was like you said. It was sort of a game of half chances. But in the first 2 minutes, the Zamora centre back Eric Ruiz had a free header which hits the bar. Yeah, and there was a FVS decision for an appeal for a penalty for Zamora on Mickey Cordina, but yeah, it was clear as daylight. I don't know why they checked that. It was no foul there.
Yeah.
The home side sort of dominated the first half possession, putting dangerous crosses in from open play. But yeah, Ponfe didn't really do anything, to be honest.
No, that's it. It felt like, every chance he got was sort of like, just let's see if we can hit one from distance. And yeah, if you were up against maybe a team down towards the bottom end of Primera RF, you could possibly get away with that. But, coming up against one of the goalkeepers of the season so far for me with Sobron, it's going to be a difficult challenge all the way. And then incidentally, the same at the other end as well. Prieto obviously proving himself to be a brilliant keeper once again, but it was his error which led to the opening goal for Eric Ruiz. It was a shot from distance, wasn't it, where he sort of like just palmed it, but the way it's bounced, it's just put itself on a plate for Eric Ruiz, and he just nods in with a plum to give Zamora the lead. I did really appreciate the baby celebration as well. I don't know if you saw this in back in the highlights. He sticks the ball under his shirt, so a great way to announce that he's got an expected on the way. And then again, I agree with you entirely. Even for the rest of this game, it was just half chances here, not really a lot to compete with, not really a lot to write about. And it was only when we got to added time where we see these 2 penalty decisions. I think it's fair to say that they are both penalties, aren't they?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. They were dispatched well by Carlos Ramos and Javier Carbonell. Ponfe can't really complain about decisions. But it turns out the last penalty has now given Zamora the goal average over Ponfe after Ponfe won 2-0 at home back in October. So that was a real kick in the teeth. And yeah, even though Zamora are the Tenerife light, they're not great on the eye, but they get the job done under Oscar Cano. And it turns out that they've accumulated 46 points. Only Tenerife, Sabadell, and El Dente have done more since his arrival, which is pretty impressive.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think considering, I hold my hands up. I was very mocking of his appointment when he came in, especially for what we'd seen him do previously in the Spanish Segunda. But he's really brought stability and a forward motion into that. And, has answered all the critics, to be fair, and he's got them into the playoffs. Like I say, I think for Zamora, it's now looking more at can they hunt down Celta Fortuna for that second position in Grupo Uno, which means they get to play the fifth side in Grupo Dos when it comes to the playoffs, and I think that would give them, a better dynamic, a better, opportunity playing the away game first and then coming back home for the second leg, for example. So that's going to be their aim. And I think with Ponfe as well, they'll still have hopes of catching up with Pontevedra, but it's getting more and more difficult because these head-to-heads start to come into play as well. And I think, if I remember rightly, they don't have the head-to-head on Pontevedra either. So it's gonna be harsh, and we can only hope, Tom, that Real Madrid Castilla fuck it up and they drop out and those other teams get in. So fingers crossed on that one there. I had the joy of watching the Grupo Dos games this week, starting with a game on Friday afternoon. So again, complete, at the time, surprise to me, was like, oh, there's a game this evening, Alcorcon against Europa. It kicked off at 3:00, and I had no idea. And to be fair, the home side came into this one, Tom, sort of like knowing that anything but a win would mean that they give up their chances of any kind of promotion, reaching the playoffs, for example. Yet Europa also know they need to keep on winning games and keep momentum to keep their place in the playoffs because there is a little chasing pack behind them. And it proved to be the case. But just before kickoff, I was watching back on the highlights of this, and I swear to God that this is true. If you go back and watch the highlights on YouTube and just watch the players walking out, I am 100% sure they are listening to Wallace and Gromit theme tune. You know that.
Yeah.
And I know Preston North End play it nowadays because obviously they create Nick parties from Preston. But why they would be playing at the Estadio Santo Domingo, I have no idea. But I am sure as hell that was being played as they walked out. So there must be an interesting story there if that is the case.
We're going to have to ask Alcorcon Alex, I think, for that answer.
We will. We need confirmation, Alex. If you can reach out to us and just confirm that for us, that'd be really, really good for us as well. There's a couple of changes to to the Europa team. Back in this one, Alex Canio back from suspension, wasn't it, Tom? And Europa starting with the majority of offensive players like Jordi Canio, Gain, Noradine, and Mihakas. And it really worked for them as well, didn't they? Because before they knew it, they were on the front foot from the get go, really, weren't they?
Yeah, they were on the front foot and they were really playing quite well. And Alcorcon's game plan was only to sort of, once they had the ball in the midfield, hit a diagonal ball out to the left where Mariano was drifting out to. But yeah, back to Europa's sort of play. Mesak, he plays in the centre midfield there for the visitors. He was always sort of dropping in from midfield to retrieve the ball and starting off the play. And yeah, both keepers start this game really brightly, didn't they?
They really did, and it was a really good start for both of them, which is why I think Gaisca Ayesa will be more disappointed of the two, because when it comes to it, he makes a brilliant save from about 5 yards out, to be fair, one-on-one, with a brilliant initial stop, but it's then he's let down by his fellow defenders because, there is a chance for them to clear the lines. However, Jordi Canio, who is, scored 20 goals already this season, is jogging on the spot to just, lash this one in to grab his 21st. And he must have got up thinking, lads, come on, just get a toe on it. Just try and get a foot round it or something. Because, again, he shouldn't be scoring from there when there's, I think I counted the best part of 4 or 5 Alcorcon defenders around the ball at the time. Take nothing away from Jordi Canio, though. He's had an absolutely brilliant season, hasn't he? I don't think anyone would have seen, him scoring 20-odd goals at Primera level if you'd have said that last season. It'd be really interesting to see where he does end up next year, whether, a club from Segunda takes him or whether obviously Europa get up into Segunda as well. But he does love this club with, everything apart from him. He's obviously there with his brother. He's very much, from the area. Do you think he would ever leave, that club for another opportunity, or do you think he's a Europa man through and through?
Well, I don't know him personally. I think he's like the Spanish Jamie Vardy, really. He loves the club, but will the money do the talking if someone else comes in and offers him, say, double the amount that he's earning already at Europa? But yeah, don't know what his situation is, really.
Yeah, I'd love to see him stay, especially if we're getting Europa back at New Sardinia next season. We've got a Barrio derby between them and San Andreu as well, potentially if they stay in Primera F. Let's not forget. I'd like to see him stay in the blue and white, to be perfectly honest, but we'll wait and see. And for me, Europa stood firm, keeping the lead. We were very compact, all over the pitch, weren't they? Especially in the centre of it. The home side had a few more hopeful long range shots, but nothing really, hitting the target. There was a bit of controversy around half time, just as Escolero stood his ground to bring down Paul Domingo. I don't know if you saw this, but for me, this is definitely a foul, and it was also the start of sort of like the referee losing the game for me, and I think especially in the second half, this is it became a common occurrence really where players were protesting and not getting what they wanted, so they would crowd the referee, who was Eugenia Gil Sarona for this game. The second half remained really, really tense. Both sides kept appealing for the ref for the sort of the softest of fouls, but then the real scandal comes around the red card, Tom. I don't really understand what has happened here for Ivan Perez to be dismissed. I've watched it back a few times, and he obviously has a bit of altercation with Jay. He's obviously squaring up to Jay, but he's not making any contact. He's not headbutted somebody, and then it looks as if he is then pushed by a Europa player, which means as he's going backwards, his sort of like hand comes up and grazes the face of Jay. But then Jay goes down, as if he's been on the other end of an Esteban Andrade right hook and falls to the floor. It all looks very dramatic. It all looks very silly. It all looks like handbags. But ultimately, he gets a straight red for that, even after the ref has gone and checked the FVS. I generally can't see how this should have been a red card.
Yeah, I've had to rewatch it multiple times to figure out what's gone on. He does get pushed. It's just a question of whether his arm, it affected him from controlling it, and he does make a contact, sort of undercut, slaps his cheek / chin,
tickles him.
But he's gone down like he'd been shot. I think it can go either way. It depends on the referee's perspective of whether he meant it or not. Another question.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, Europa see this game out, obviously up against 10 men now. They see it out 1-0. It's more of the same story for Alcohol this season. They just, really lacked a certain amount of firepower, which is, difficult to understand considering they've got, Cesariano and Vladis, Vladis, since he sort of like had that unconfirmed move to Cardiff, has been a bit of a shadow of himself. And ironically, he might be going to Cardiff and might end up still be playing in Primera F next season, depending on how results go in the league above. It's a good result for Europa. It obviously keeps them in place. Let's call a spade for me. The ref was all over the place for this one and basically, probably cost the home side a point in the end. If they had any chance of getting a goal back in this one, it was having 11 men on the pitch. And without, I'm not saying Perez is essential to their striking attack. He's a aging centre-back. But having 11 men against Europa is usually quite handy, isn't it? So, yes.
There was one more controversial decision, which wasn't actually shown on the highlights, which I can't believe.
We'll go for it.
Yeah. There was a situation where Sergio Nieto, the Alcacon defender, catches the ball and the ref had stopped play or blew for it. He was basically stopping it because he thought the attacker was offside. But it turns out he was the last man and the attacker looked like he was onside and basically stopped him from going through on goal. And it went to FES and they ruled it in Nieto's favour, which I thought he was a very lucky boy because he could have got sent off for that.
Yeah, I was going to say I did remember seeing something on Twitter about that actually, because I think it was more of like a play to the whistle kind of appeal, wasn't it? Because he kind of looked over and appealed for offside. I think that's what came down to it, wasn't it? But lucky boy to still be in the pitch after that one. To be honest, I'm surprised the referee didn't reach for a pocket on that one, to be honest. So yeah, not a great afternoon for Alcorcon, not a great afternoon for the referee, but a great afternoon for Europa, who maintain their run into the playoffs.
And I just want to quick mention, Juan Flair's hair. What is he doing? looks like an Iniesta's home shirt.
Oh no, I was going to say he's a bit of a spectacle, that man, isn't he? In terms of the way he presented himself in a minute, but we are seeing more of these characters in football, and obviously we're losing Anton Griezmann to the US, so maybe he could step up and fill those shoes as Madrid's sharply haired man. Who knows? The two sides that are chasing Europa for that playoff spot, Tom, are Algeciras and Cartagena, both just outside the playoff positions in Grupo Dos. This would definitely have been the game I would have recommended anyone to watch this week. It turned to be a proper Friday night on the lights, but probably not for a football reason. It turned out to be a bit of another game which was sort of like going to be remembered for the referees' inputs. Before we get into this game, Tom, I know you're a kit man. I know you've got an extensive collection of shirts that we can see behind you on YouTube here. Capelli as a kits manufacturer, are you a fan? Do you like the Algeciras shirt?
I don't know. I'm undecided, really. But it looks like they ran out of material to complete the shirts one week, and then the following week they found some material, but they've misaligned the stripes. But it's not actually the first time that their kit's been like this. They had a Nike one back in the 23-24 season, which was very similar. I'm just wondering whether it's like has a special meaning for the club.
Potentially. I have a soft spot because Capelli used to make Blackpool shirts once upon a time. So I've been on the receiving end of what is essentially a JD-owned shirt manufacturer, along with Cabrini as well, for those who are old enough to remember. But it must be bringing them some good fortune since they've moved away from Nike, because obviously they are in this playoff hunt, and they did take an early lead in this match. It all started with some full-blooded tackles from Victor Ruiz, and a picturesque outside of the boot pass from Oscar Castro, but also some great work from Juan Garcia, who sort of like pirouetted and turned Danny Parejon inside out in the build-up and popped it on a play for Isaac Oben to convert at the second time of asking. And for me, Algeciras were just great in this first half, weren't they? They were really electric, weren't they?
Yeah, they were just really quick on the break, really, with Joseca playing at right back, and yeah, just really quick, just getting the ball out wide. And yeah, as we come on to it, Joseca turned provider, didn't he?
He did, yeah. Some brilliant interplay with a bang on this right-hand side, and Cartagena were all sort of like left at sea, and he puts it on a place for Rastroho, as I'll say properly, who basically just sidestepped his man and really finished with a neat and tidy pass against Lucho Garcia as well. Cartagena pushed to find themselves way back into the game, and they were rewarded with an imperious header from Adrian Hernandez, powering home from the corner just before half-time. Then comes the tale of two penalties here, Tom. There was one that was given and one that wasn't. First off was Algeciras' Angel appeared to be grappled in the box, sort of like pulled around as he looked to attack the corner. Vasquez on the bench was absolutely incandescent with this one. Enough protest for him to go and check FES as well, but the referee decided to keep with his original decision, despite the fact that this looked, for all intents and purposes, like a foul. And then we go down to the other end, and there is a foul on Victor Ruiz, a slight nudge, who was sort of like on the turn, and he then decides that is enough to award a penalty to Cartagena, even though I think, to Victor Ruiz's fairness, he's just turning around with his arm. I don't think he's intending to push the Cartagena attacker out of the way. But again, after another FES check, it's awarded as a penalty, and the referee maintains his decision once again. Feels a bit harsh, Tom. It feels as if there's no comparative there. It seems like one is worse than the other, yet they've both got opposite outcomes. But mainly the referee deciding to ignore any kind of FVS intelligence on this one.
Yeah, I'd say going back to the first one, I believe the referee made the right decision, because as you see, the defender has his arms around him, but you can see the attacker has his arms like below the defender and pulls him towards him and then falls over. So I don't think it was a penalty in my opinion. But the second one for me is definitely not a penalty. The ball hits him on the shoulder because I think it comes from a ball in the air, and I think it was Romani, wasn't it? Who heads it?
Yeah.
And yeah, it looks to me like it just hits him on the shoulder, but yeah, they decided it was a penalty.
Yeah, really soft this first one. Romani would step up to convert that just before half time. And then unfoolishly, for some strange reason, Ander Martin gets himself off for a second yellow card for the daftest shirt pull just on the stroke of half time. Just as the referee was literally about to blow the whistle for half time, gets himself sent off. It means that Cartagena are down to 10 men with a full second half to go for. However, it wouldn't be too long before we then get to see our next red card. This time for Carlos Aruz. He'd be the first to go. He was brought on at half time, but was adjudged to have clipped the back heel of Neil Jimenez and got given a straight red. And, this was one that, again, Vasquez couldn't quite believe. And, again, I feel sorry for Thomas Sanchez here because he also got given a red card, which I think was a second yellow for being argumentative to the referee. But I think he was actually just trying to calm people down on the touchline. If you look back at this one, Tom, he's kind of like protesting with people to get back onto the benches, and I think he's been caught in a bit of a mistaken identity here and then given his marching orders, and he's again incandescent with range that he's been sent off here. We then see a red card for Ivan Torrio a few moments later. He's also on the bench, so he's sent off, so it's not really affecting things on the pitch, but that's now two red cards to Algeciras, one red card to Cartagena. And then, believe it or not, I'm going to keep going with this one. Fidalgo also then gets a red card for a pretty tactical foul on this one. There's a break from Algeciras with Javier Vilas. He's pulled back and sort of like nipped on the back of the leg. So, again, to stop the break, Fidalgo's gone for it, but he gets sent off. And then, last but not least, I couldn't even tell you what happened with Yanis Romani here. They've decided not to share this, but Yanis Romani gets sent off for violent conduct. But seems to be happy to go around the pitch shaking hands at the end of the game, Tom. So I didn't look too bothered by it. But an absolutely mad second half where we see, 5 red cards, one just before half time. The referee is an absolute shocker here, hasn't he? Really lost control of this game. It's just mad to see this, isn't it?
Yeah, the referee dishing out his cards in the first half, and there's a couple of decisions. Well, I believe all the red cards that were for dangerous tackles were the correct decisions, but just the way he went about it and just he lost control of the game. And this match made Primera RFEF history actually with the most cards shown with 17, and it was the first time that there were 6 red cards in this competition as well.
Wow, it's a really interesting one, and and I think both of these sides are obviously chasing that playoff position. Now they're going to potentially have 3 players suspended each at a real vital time of the season. Again, some of them straight red, some of them a mixture of double yellows, and it'll be interesting to see how long some of these bans will be, because for some of them that might be it for the rest of the season at a time when they could have a playoff campaign. They might not do, but eventually losing those players might have an interference on their season as well. So we'll wait to see the outcomes.
It was very strange, this game as well, because when Cartagena were receiving their red cards, it made it more difficult for the home side to actually play their fast attacking football. But when they went down to 9 men, it worked out weirdly better for them, and they carried on playing with their fast attacking football because Cartagena didn't sit back. So
yeah. Very odd. But that's football. That's how it all works sometimes, isn't it? So yeah. The next and final game of Grupo Dos that we wanted to watch or recommend you to watch, Villarreal B against Hercules. It ended up being 1-0 to Villarreal B. I don't want to go too much into this because I hate talking about Filiales, to be fair. They started the game on the front foot, to be fair, and eventually, they managed to get a goal, a brilliant through ball from Alassane, credit where credit's due, and Hugo Lopez, put the home side 1-0 ahead. And again, just to maybe, jump ahead to this part, Tom, it was just a very disappointing flat game from Hercules, to be honest, who still had a slight chance of reaching the playoffs before this match kicked off. now they're looking at another season in Primera for definite. It's a shame to have a big club of this size, sort of like, wailing at this level. And, they've obviously invested a fair bit of money into the squad at the start of the season. They've brought in a very, competent manager with Beto Company. It's a shame that, that over the next 3 games are probably not going to make the playoffs or be in that promotion picture. Which it's a shame to see, because I would have liked to have seen them up there, especially in a place of, a Villarreal Bay or an Atletico Madrileño, for example.
Yeah, just in this game, they tried to play, but they just didn't have that quality, really. They just put in loose passes, like, say, one of them ended up in the goal for Villarreal Bay. It's been very sort of disappointing end of the season for them, really, because I don't see them making it at all. And hopefully next season they build on what Beto Company's, because he's not been in the whole season, has he? So hopefully he gets a summer of doing what he wants to do, and hopefully might see them up at the top end next season.
Fingers crossed. But what that does do, it cements Villarreal Bay's place in the playoffs for this moment in time. And, I suppose the best we can hope for now, Tom, is some tactical finishing where maybe, if Villarreal Bay can finish 5th, they'll play, Celta Fortuna in 2nd. So then at least one Villarreal gets knocked out. The same if Atletico Madrileño finish 3rd, they'd come up against Real Madrid Castilla if they could finish 5th, and they'd again, cancel each other out. So, we're very much on damage control watch when it comes to Filiales in the playoffs at the moment. Let's go for a quick roundup of the rest of the games from both Grupos. Tom, do you want to take us through the top end of Grupo Uno?
Yeah, so Osasuna Promesas turned kingmakers as they beat Celta Fortuna in Vigo by 1-0, which meant it was possible, well, now impossible for the Galicians to catch Tenerife, who were crowned champions. And then Zamora, who sit 3rd, finished with 53 points last season, now on 58 points with 3 games to go. So they're pretty much cemented in the playoffs and hopefully might even nick 2nd place. But sadly, our favourite filial, Real Madrid Castilla, also gave their playoff prospects a boost by beating Unionistas 1-0, with the away side clinging on to the faint hopes of finishing in the playoffs. Then Pontevedra have given hope to the chasing pack after they could only muster a 0-0 draw in the Galician derby against Racing Club de Ferrol. And they have put out a statement about the referee's performance over the weekend, about after being denied a clear goal, which I saw, and I can't believe it was disallowed for a foul in the build-up play.
That bad.
Probably about a couple minutes. It wasn't even a foul. It was sort of coming together. But they deemed a foul with Luis Yao. But which means Ponfe and Barricado only just 3 points behind them with 3 more games to play. And Tenerife champions, with Celta Fortuna staying in 2nd, ahead of Zamora in 3rd. Real Madrid Castilla in 4th, whilst Pontevedra occupy that final playoff spot as things stand.
Yeah, really interesting, the playoff picture there, which, I think looked pretty dead for a while, to be honest, but there's still a lot of motions which can happen with 3 games to go at the top of Grupo Uno. Down at the bottom, we see our first relegation casualty of Grupo Uno with Arenteiro heading down to Segunda RFEF. That actually happened before a ball was kicked as well. But, even though that happened, they didn't go out with a win. They lost 4-0 to Cacereño, who, again, with Talavera, with Guadalajara, and also with Osasuna Promesas, could they do it again? They survived on the final day of last season and are now just 3 points from safety following back-to-back wins, and this latest against the aforementioned Celta Fortuna that crowned Tenerife champions. Talavera also picked up a vital win against the Arenas club to move level on points with Orense on 39 points, whilst Depor Guadalajara's 2-2 draw with Real Vilas Industrial will give neither side survival chances a boost. So, as we were just saying there, the bottom are already relegated Arenteiro, with Osasuna Promesas currently in 19th, just 2 points behind Depor in 18th. Catherine in 17th, and Talavera currently occupying that final relegation spot in 16th, level on points with Orense. Do you want to do the top of Grupo Dos, or do you want me to do the top of Grupo Dos?
You can do top, I'll do bottom. That's fine.
That sounds good to me. Well, at the top of Grupo Dos, Eldense moved back to the top of the league with a huge 3-1 win against Marbella, a result which sends, the ambitious Marbella club back down to Segunda RFEF, but very much puts Eldense in the driving seat for automatic promotion because Sabadell could only muster a 2-2 draw with Real Murcia this weekend. A brilliant result for the away side, but essentially confirms their place in Primera F next season, but not so great for Sabadell as they slip into second, level on points with Eldense. But as you said, Tom, they have the head-to-head on Sabadell, which means Eldense are in the driving seat at the moment. Atletico Madrileño's title hopes, were served a huge dent as they had a second half rout by Juventud de Torremolinos, which saw them lose 3-1 at El Pozuelo. That leaves them 4 points off top spot with the automatic promotion spot slipping from their grasp. And as we've also mentioned, Villarreal B tightened their grip on the playoff spot with a 1-0 win over Hercules, but the Alicante side's hopes of securing a playoff spot for this season out of the picture, and Europa effectively ending Alcorcon's 2 by that 1-0 win on Friday night, which means they stay in 5th place. How about the bottom end of Grupo Dos, Tom?
Well, we had the already relegated Sevilla Atletico continue their poor season, whilst Nastic de Tarragona boosted their survival hopes with a 2-1 win at New Estadi Costa da Ruda. It was a touch and go for the Catalan side, though, as their winner was scored in the 96th minute by Oscar Sanz. Yes. We love when a filial gets beat, don't we? They are also joined in Segunda RFEF by Atletico San Luqueño and Marbella now, after both sides losing, meaning that they can no longer catch Nastic in 15th place. Betis Deportivo, who under Javi Medina looked destined for Segunda RFEF by Christmas, but are close to completing the Great Escape, this time with a 1-0 win away at El Maui over Antequera. But that puts them just 5 points off safety and only 4 points behind Tarazona, who drew 0-0 in Teruel, a result that really doesn't help their survival chances, especially with Nastic and Torremolinos picking up vital victories. And as it stands, Sevilla Atletico bottom already relegated, Atletico San Luqueño and Marbella, and then just Betis Deportivo just hanging in there, and Tarazona occupying that final relegation spot.
Yeah, really exciting down there as well. Obviously, 3 spaces have gone, 2 remain, but a bit of a queue really for the teams that could still go down in Grupo Dos, which should be definitely worth watching. I think if you listen back to last week's episode, we sort of explained how we could end up with a bit of a mini league, which may not be great news for Nastic de Tarragona fans. So a big win this weekend for them, really boosting their survival hopes as well. It's my turn to pick the Grupo Uno games this weekend, so I'm going to go with 3 games with varying amounts of jeopardy and interest. The first one I want to point you towards is Baracaldo against Merida at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Merida can still technically make the playoffs, but it's going to require some absolute fall off from not just a couple of sides above them, 6 sides above them that would have to really fall away for them. So it's safe to say we're going to get to enjoy Merida for another year. But Baracaldo will still have it all to play for, just 3 points off the playoffs at the minute, and will need to keep chasing Pontevedra down to the very, very end. Guadalajara against Arenteiro, 6:30 on Saturday evening. It's a big opportunity for Depor to put some points on the board against an already relegated Arenteiro, knowing that if results go their way, they could finish the weekend outside of the bottom 5, outside of those relegation places. And then it's not often you'll see me recommending a filial game, Tom, but I am going to recommend Osasuna Promesas against Talavera at 12 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. Not that we want it to happen, but it'll be some turnaround if Osasuna can get out of this mess after they've spent most of the season in the relegation zone. But they have a huge test with Talavera coming to town, who know just another 3 points will have them out of that dreaded relegation spot and also give their survival chances a huge boost. How about Grupo Dos for this weekend's viewing?
Well, I've done a very similar thing to you. Battles at the top and the bottom end of the table. And also I've included maybe not just 1, but 2 filials in my selection.
Filials.
Yeah, but they were the standout ones for me.
Yeah.
Atletico Madrileño versus Sabadell on Friday, 9:15 p.m. kickoff. Two sides with disappointing results from this weekend. Sabadell trying to regain top spot, and Atletico Madrileño trying to gain some ground on their opponents and Eldense. The second match, Tarazona versus Gymnastique, Sunday 4:30 p.m. kickoff. Battle to avoid that last relegation spot, even though Betis Deportivo are still in the shout for survival. Themselves and Tarazona trying to chase that pact, which is Gymnastique, Juventud de Torremolinos, and maybe Real Murcia at a stretch. And then at the same time, Europa versus Villarreal B, another battle as Cartagena and Algeciras in the hunt for Europa's and Villarreal B's playoff spots.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good one in the end there, especially if Europa can get a victory at the Estadio Candidago, because that'll just drag Villarreal B back into some danger. And we can only hope that a couple of those chasing teams, either Algeciras or Cartagena, could possibly pop in there just ahead of the filial as well. Not that we want to keep them in this league, but the idea of them going into the Spanish Segunda just irks me something horrible. So yeah, some great games to watch there. Even though they have got two filials in, Tom, I will let you off on that one there.
Yeah, it did make me sick in these ones, but
I can imagine. But we can only work with what we got to work with, to be fair, Tom. And these are some of the fascinating games from this weekend with a lot of jeopardy and a lot to play for. And if you head over to our social media, we'll always keep you up to date with all the happenings down El Podo in Primera Federación. So go and give us a follow on there. If you like our content as well, definitely go check out some of our interviews we've done recently with the general manager of Merida, for one, and also Antonio Paz, who is the Unionistas sporting director. Liam's had some box office interviews in the last few weeks, so they're definitely worth checking out on our Spotify pages, on the Spanish Segunda Patreon, and on our YouTube page too. And yeah, we've got 3 games of the season left, all still to play for. We'll keep you up to date with the Segunda Federación playoffs as well to see who's going to come and join us, and we'll also keep an eye out in the next couple of weeks for who might come down from the Spanish Segunda too. So Tom, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk all things Primera RF with you.
Likewise, mate. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure indeed, and a great debut, may I add as well. I feel like we've done little and large, Peter Crouch, Michael Owen sort of style, and we've managed to get a few goals into the back of the net. And I've obviously, of course, as always, thank you so much to you guys listening at home. Muchas gracias. Your support is always brilliant. We've had a fantastic season so far. We're almost there, and we're almost into playoff season as well, which is the most exciting playoffs you'll find in European football, in my opinion. So yes, plenty more to look forward to. But for now, we'll catch you later and say hasta luego. Ta-ra.